The Army Painter is my favorite hobby company in the entire world. My desk is literally full of Army Painter products, and it takes me from being an average painter to putting above tabletop standard models out into the tournament scene. Not only that, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive play than any other hobby company in the industry. They allow us to keep doing the things that we do. If you enjoy the Army Painter as much as I do, head over to thearmypainter.com where you can use the discount code ARTOFWAR5 to get a discount on your next order. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art of War. We got a super exciting one here today as Jack and I are going to discuss some of the changes we're hoping to see in the next data slate whenever that occurs. So there's a lot of things that have happened over the past couple months since the last data slate.
Yep.
We had Grotmas, all new detachments for the game. Several codexes have launched, Guard, Aldari, and Emperor's Children coming out. Lots and lots of new things happening in 40k. So the game it's in a very interesting place.
It is. I'm really loving what they did with Grotmas. Grotmas just dumped a whole bunch of new content on the game. Some of that for good, some of that for ill. But, you know, generally, I would say that Grotmas has been a very good thing for the game. Just a big shakeup.
It's just fresh. You know, it can get stale, especially for index armies that are stuck with one detachment for many, many months, even years. All of a sudden, you get a whole new play style, ideally. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's been a rousing success. So, you know, they're going to go back in, they're going to take a look at some of this stuff and determine, oh, that Grotmas stuff probably needs a little bit of a hit or not. But I think Grotmas has been phenomenal for the game.
Me too. I would love to see more of it in the future. So Games Workshop, if anybody is listening from the company, that was one of the best, most hype things that you guys have ever done for 40k rules. Would love to see something like that again.
Absolutely. So this video, there is, as of time of recording, it appears that there is not going to be a data slate today. So today we're just instead we're just going to
wish list.
We're just going to wish list. Talk about what things we think should be in a data slate.
This is stuff from our own brains. We know nothing. We do not have anything. People are going to post like blah blah blah. You know this and that. Nope. We're blank slates. This is what we're wish listing.
I promise you, we're not slick enough. If we had the balanced data slate and this was how we chose to get it out there. That's a very unslick way to do it, I promise.
Exactly. So we're going to be putting our own opinions on here. Who knows if any of this stuff will happen, but I think there's a good amount of discussion points for the current meta, that there's a lot of interesting things that could happen. And so that's what we're going to focus on here in this video. So if you are joining us, please do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave us a comment below letting us know what you are hoping to see in the next data slate, whether game-wide changes to your armies, changes to your opponent's armies. Let us know. And then if you want to see more content from us, like all the content related to the new factions that have released, Guard, Aldari, Emperor's Children, we have tons of new stuff in the war room at thewarroom.vhx.tv. There's plenty of new games with all the different detachments for those armies and many more to come. In addition, there's content for every faction in the game, state of the faction, new list ideas for all the armies, and you get access to our international Discord community. And the Art of War TTS League just started happening. If you're a War member or a Patreon member, you can access that as well. So lots of exciting stuff happening. Definitely check it out. That 3-day free trial is a great way to get your feet wet and kind of experience what's going on in there.
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Jack, let's start off. So these are not in any particular order. We haven't really ranked them as like, you have to solve this, Games Workshop, to it'd be nice if you solve this. We've kind of just put our thoughts to several big areas and discussion points, and we're going to talk about them. So starting off, Games Workshop has done several things since the beginning of 10th edition to the core rules. And one of those is changing how you can reduce the cost of stratagems or increase the cost of stratagems. At the beginning of the edition, free stratagems, which was simply making a stratagem 0 CP, was literally all over the game, and it was easy to access. It was incredibly broken for the armies that did have it compared to the ones that didn't. And so Games Workshop has slowly reined this in. However, in this meta, there are a couple serious offenders of, hey, I just get to use far more stratagems than your opponent.
Yeah, there's a difference between I get a free strat battle round on selected units, and there is a fire hose of stratagems that's about to be shot into the center of the board here. And yeah, one of the peak offenders is Ultramarines.
Absolutely. They have, so first of all, they have Calgar. He guaranteed gives you a CP if he's alive in each of your command phases. So guaranteed, you're going to have 2 in each of your command phases, which is nice. We see these characters exist across the game. They're usually pretty powerful and useful. Then we have, on top of that, they can access the captain data sheet, which is going to reduce a stratagem for that unit being led by the captain per battle round.
Yep.
But then they have Guilliman, and Guilliman got some amazing buffs, including he gets to pick 2 of his powerful auras, which one of them is he can reduce a stratagem cost within 12 inches once per turn, not battle round, per turn. These are all different rules. So technically, I believe the limit is Ultramarines, if they have all this alive and are using it all, could have 30 stratagems spent in the course of 5 battle rounds.
Yes, because you get 10 CP for just playing the game. You get 10 free CP for Guilliman, basically, because he makes 10 strats free. So that's 20. And then Calgar gives you 5 extra CP, so that's 25. And the captain gives you functionally 5 extra for 30. Now, they're not going to use all of that with perfect efficiency, but I would like to invite you to guess that they don't need perfect efficiency if they get effectively 30 CP in a game to your 10.
And ultimately, Ultramarines, whether they're playing in the many different detachments they have access to, have amazing strategies. But even just having extra core rule stratagems, which are quite strong, is enough to make this pretty oppressive, I would say. There are other armies like Deathwatch has access to the Watchmaster and also a captain, so they could use both of those since they're different named rules. And because they're named differently, you can use both of them. So these are big offenders of this, and I would really like to see a change because throughout the edition, there's several armies that just don't have access to free strats or are super inconsistent to access it. And these haves versus have-nots have really resulted in kind of a off command point economy.
Yeah, and again, I think that it's fine if you get your 10 CP and then you get a free strat on like a select unit and then maybe another one. Like, I think the max you should get is like Azrael plus a captain. Azrael plus a captain is 20. 15 CP you can use on anything. 5 you have to use on the selected captain unit.
Yeah.
That feels like the top end of what should be allowed. But then you have that plus Guilliman, and now suddenly you're just spamming them everywhere. I mean, technically, Tyranids have this as well, right? They have the Swarm Lord. The Swarm Lord gives you a CP, and the Hive Tyrant gives you 2 free strats a battle round, 1 per player turn. So technically, they can get up to 25, which is a little high. You don't actually see that combo because it's expensive, but you
definitely see the Hive Tyrant.
The Hive Tyrant you see everywhere. It's pretty good.
So I would like to see a change to this, and obviously this can mean like Guilliman, the Hive Tyrant, whatever, goes down in points because they're not quite as oppressive anymore. But I would like to see a change to this.
Yeah, my proposed change would be something like you can, no matter what the rule is called, you can only make 1 strat free a turn, tops.
I would make it battle rounds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have to think about how to balance specifically Guilliman or specifically
I would just
the Hive
change
Tyrant.
that.
Yeah.
I would just make it battle round and then change their specific rule to be something else.
Yeah, or there's an interesting suggestion in chat, which is you tie their abilities to being the Warlord. So only one of them can work at any point in time, which would be a good way to solve it as well.
That's another great way, yeah.
Good thoughts, Sanocht.
There's a bunch of super chats in here. We will go through these after we kind of work through some of our suggestions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we will get to them towards the end of it, and we'll do them all together. So we have not forgotten. We see them. We will get to them. Don't you worry.
I'll talk about Trajan.
All right, moving on to our next one is a change that was pretty massive. Space Marines had a lower win rate than really they should have, in my opinion.
Like generic Space Marines.
Generic Space Marines.
They're like
not the supplemental
Raven Guard,
chapters.
Iron Hands, White Scars, those sort of things.
In particular, an army like Ultramarines had been performing really, really well overall in the meta. At Worlds, they had made the top cut. They had knocked out some very top players. And then they got a massive buff, which is that Oath of Moment, in addition to giving the full rerolls to hit on the target, gives +1 to wound as well. And then Guilliman specifically got an upgrade where he can pick a second one of his aura abilities, and one of those is a second Oath. So Ultramarines can get 2 targets with +1 to wound. And that's pretty darn powerful. You obviously have to kill the first one.
Yeah, Ultramarines just need to not have this. It's that simple, really.
They have would you say they're the best character suite that any Space Marine chapter, even the supplements, have access to?
Yes.
Yeah, it has to be, right?
I thought for a second, I'm like, ooh, Dark Angels of Azrael, but they have Calgar. Calgar's better than Azrael.
They have Calgar, Gilliman, the Vect guy, Uriel Ventress.
Yeah, they're pretty gross. So the thing is, right, that if you decide, for example, let's talk about Blood Angels. If you decide to take a Blood Angel list that does not have any Blood Angel units, you get the +1 to wound oath. That's Bloodless Angels. In my personal opinion, that list is worse than if you just took the better Blood Angel datasheets that you wanted, right? Think about it this way. What's better, having +1 to wound on your oath target, something you likely don't need, or just having most of your or several of your units natively have +1 to wound because they're higher strength, because they're Sanguinary Guard now, right? And higher AP and just higher damage and just better all around, better durability, all of that. I would choose that option. Same thing with the characters. So generally, I would say that if you're taking like a supplement, like Templars, I would take Templar units. I don't want Oath.
You want Sword Brethren. Sword Brethren, amazing.
Right. Sword Brethren, Black Templar Impulsors, the characters, right? Grimaldus, all that. I want that. I don't want the +1 to wound comparatively. Blood Angels, for me, I know that there are some people out there playing Bloodless Angels. It's not a bad list. I actually think that list should stick around, but that's just me. I would rather take the Blood Angel specific units. Same with Dark Angels. Dark Angels want those, Deathwing Knights and Azrael and ICC, right? Deathwatch very clearly want their own specific units, and Space Wolves as well want their specific units. Ultramarines are basically like that, where they would choose to take their specific units over having Oath. But guess what?
Can't get them both, Jack.
You get them both. So it's not a trade-off. You just get both halves. It's a win-win and a lose for everyone else.
And the big thing that was missed here is that Games Workshop is trying to solve the problem of the generic Codex Marines had a lower win rate than they should have, and they should be buffed. The thing is Ultramarines themselves didn't. They had they had an Ironstorm build, they had a Gladius build, and they had a Vanguard build, all of which were having success for a while. Instead of just targeting the entire codex, which is what they did, they should have spent more time thinking about, okay, well, Ultramarines are in a pretty good spot. How do we help Salamanders, White Scars, Raven Guard, all those ones, Iron Hands? And this buff is a good buff for those ones. They did other ones in the data slate as well, which I think were nice, the extra OC for particular units. But because Ultramarines got this buff, they are by far the best codex chapter. Yeah. They just became even more popular to play, and they're doing amazing right now. But where you're not seeing many Raven Guard, White Scars, etc. type lists because you have Ultramarines here. They just push them completely out.
Yeah, it does undermine the entire point here, right? Yeah. The point is to reward Iron Hands, White Scars, Raven Guard, that sort of thing, Salamanders, right? It's to reward taking those armies, which were bad. Like, they were just bad.
They were legitimately needed buffs. 100%.
They legitimately needed it, but Ultramarines just intercepted and hoovered it all up for themselves. And that needs to not happen, please. Somebody points out in the chat the Bloodless Angels got first and second at Manchester. I would like you to take a look at who was running that and think that they might have done well with other armies too.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Josh Roberts can play anything.
Yeah.
All right. So Oath of Moment change, I think Ultramarines being restricted from this is pretty obvious and will likely happen, I imagine. All right, next up, we have the Genestealer Cults. So Genestealer Cults got one of the strongest detachments in the Grotmas update. They got a detachment called Final Day, in which you can ally in certain Tyranid units into your GSC. And when you do this, you get some amazing lone ops, you get some really good buffs by having Tyranid units nearby, enemy units. And in addition to that, you still get max resurgence points for a 2,000-point army. So not only do you have great GSC stuff and great Tyranid stuff, you also still get the revive as well.
Yes.
And that makes this detachment extremely difficult to deal with for a lot of armies.
It is. So the advantage of Final Day, right, is you get the data sheets of 2 codexes to pull from, with some restrictions. But you get the data sheets of 2 codexes. So you get an insane pool to pull from. Right, most armies only have 1 codex to pull units from. This has 2, which means you can find, right, you pull the best lone ops from 1, you pull the best primary denial from 1, you pull the best shooting from the other, you pull, right, you get to do that. But you get to keep the same amount of resurgence points, which means you get the same amount of stuff back. Final Day is probably a little too strong in my opinion. I think when it's cooking, it is up there with the strongest armies in the game, if not the strongest. Because when it's pulling good secondary cards, like the way it loses is by being outscored. And that's not really up to your opponent a decent amount of the time. It's up to, well, what cards did both players draw? And, you know, what cards did both players draw? What mission is it? That's the best way to beat Final Day, not like having a good matchup into them.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to run gargoyles onto your objectives every single turn, and then you don't get to score points. You need points to win the game.
And if you want to see a great example of why this detachment is so highly rated by us, not only can you look at Nick Nonabodi's list from LVO, but you can also look at a Warhammer game that we just played, I believe last week. It was released between Jack's Angelic Inheritors, third place LVO list, and Nick's Final Day. It was an absolutely amazing, super tight matchup, and you get to see both of those strong lists in action.
I saw someone describe it as our best game. Not me. I didn't describe it that way.
But you are
someone
now.
else did. But no, I'm just telling you someone else did. They might be crazy. Who knows? But,
No,
you know.
I was on the PC. It was a great game. So out of the resurgence points, I do think that the 10-man Metamorph unit stands out as the one that is just very undercosted. It's only 4 resurgence points, which to me feels like quite a miss. It feels like somebody has never played against Metamorphs before.
I mean, at the very least, right? 5 Flamer Acolytes. Sorry, I used the shorthand.
It's also only 2.
It's 2, but 5 Metamorphs is also 2. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, so I think a little rejigging can happen in there. And personally, what I would like to see is instead of the resurgence points number being based on how many points you're playing, it instead should be based on which detachment you're playing so that you could change the number of resurgence points different detachments get. This way you can buff some of the weaker GSC detachments, but you could also put a little bit more restrictions on, say, a Final Day or a Biosancting or whatever you think the strongest ones are.
I think that would be interesting. I definitely think that they should do that for something like Brood Brothers or Final Day, where you get 2 codexes to pull from. Just reduce it. Even down to 8 would make actually a pretty huge difference. You just get like 1.
Yeah, we're not saying just
Flacco
take it
squad
away
back.
or anything like that.
Yeah. 10 Aberrants coming back is a lot, but that is your whole... It is a bit weird to have your army rule be you get to play with 2,400 points. Like,
yeah. I'll take it. I'll take it.
That seems good. I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. Probably a bit of a ding to that. They just get so many units back, right?
I think it's still a little too high.
Yeah. You have 5 Flamer Acolyte squads back, 5 Hybrid Metamorph squads back.
And you're trading to kill your opponent's units and score points, and then in your late game, all of a sudden you just have 3 or 4 extra units that your opponent just can't deal with, and so they're scoring all sorts of points and doing things that your opponent can't stop.
Yeah.
It's very, very strong. All right, moving on, we have the Adeptus Sororitas, an army that has fallen supremely from the grace of last year when it was one of the best armies and at points the absolute best army in the game. It received the patented quadruple nerf. It received some rules changes, detachment changes. It received, points increases. And then you also had the army rule got nerfed.
Yeah. So
a lot.
It got hit really hard. Now, we here at the house think it got hit pretty hard. It's not like the worst army in the game, but it got faction abandoned so hard. Like that army got just all the players ran for the hills on it and just left it behind. And so the remaining players' win rate was not stellar. It's not a great army right now. It's not in a great spot. It could really use some unwinding of some of those. I think GW went too far.
Yeah, for sure.
Personally.
Like, none of us expected them to go this far the last update around. We were like, okay, they'll probably do something, reduce the miracle dice a bit. But then they were like, no, we're just going to murder these sisters. It's like, okay.
All right,
calm down.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say
down.
anything. Jeez.
Because they already had received significant points increases, and their army had really strong rules, but it didn't have that much stuff. And obviously, the Exorcists were very oppressive because indirect fire is just nonsense. So like that going up, completely justified. But the Miracle Dice change, I think that's the one that stands out. I really think if they want to cap it, probably you want to cap it at like you can get 3 back in a turn. So that way, if there's an early game where it's super bloody, they don't just have amazing Miracle Dice the rest of the game. But I personally think that if you're trading away units, it's fine if they generate the Miracle Dice, especially since so many rules, like Hollowed Martyr rules, the new detachment from Grotmas, so many rules interact with having Miracle Dice or spending them. If you barely have any, you're only using it for your charge move or a save or something like that. and you can't use it on your actual rules. That's the huge miss, and that's why I don't think this is the thing that should have received the significant nerf.
I mean, I played into Sisters both before and after the changes, and before the change, it was in like they would have a cargo container on the table or on the side of the table, and they put their miracle dice on
18
that.
dice turn 2.
It would just be overflowing by like turn 2. And now you play against them, and they're just like struggling and scraping to have a spare miracle die. Please, can I have a miracle die? And like if they roll a couple of 1s and 2s in a row, it's
so bad.
So bad. Like they just don't have an army roll. So there's got to be a middle ground in there somewhere that they need to hit.
I think Miracle Dice is the wrong thing to target because of its interaction with a lot of core rules for Sisters. I think changing the Triumph, increasing the cost of the Exorcist, all that was reasonable. Probably the Bringers of Flame stuff, the stratagem cost increases could probably come back as well, because I think changing the +1 strength from 12 inches to 6 was already a huge nerf, and they probably didn't need to go also into the stratagems.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah, I think they just need to roll back some amount of nerfs on that, and we'll see where that army ends up. All
right. The Adeptus Mechanicus. This is going to kind of represent data sheets in the game that aren't really performing that well. So Admech has several of them. Admech just has some of the lowest damage output out there on a lot of their units. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I think things like the Twin Cognus las cannons gaining the extra shot but losing Twin Linked was really kind of a side grade, and they needed just a straight buff. And also they got points increases for whatever reason. So I think things like this where they're supposed to fill a particular role in the army but just don't do that or do it at such a supreme cost, I think these type of units need to be looked at. And personally, what I would like to see is Grotmas was amazing for getting new detachments, but a lot of armies, index armies, codex armies, have some really weak data sheets that you can keep making cheaper. Sure. Eventually, they will just be cheap enough that it's just bodies for points and it's worth it.
Yeah.
But people don't get excited. I don't get excited because something is ludicrously cheap for its durability. I get excited because it does this cool thing, and that's what most people feel. I would rather them do like a Grotmas in the future where they take, 1, 2, 3 data sheets from a lot of the different armies and just rewrite its role. Just make it fill a role well.
Yeah, it's at its worst, honestly, for codex armies.
Yeah.
Because once you get a codex...
In the past... They've
done it here, but they haven't done it that much else.
Custodes jet bikes, like they've done
Custodes
it.
Jet
they're
bikes
more willing
change.
to do it, which is important. It's huge.
Yeah.
As Jack was saying, in previous editions, you get your codex. That's it. Your unit, if it's trash, it's trash.
Yep, it's just
it might get
at some
cheaper.
Point, it might get cheap enough. But there are like, for example, a lot of Custodes data sheets that just are not. They just don't do anything, right? Like a shield captain by himself is like a crazy cost for once a game lethal hits on his unit. Not lethal hits all the time. Once a game, you get the second half of the kata. I'm not going to spend for that. Like, I don't care. Would he have to be like 80 points for me to want that? And a body? I don't know. And that's just out of whack, right? Like, that I think should be changed. There's a lot of data sheets in the game that just don't do things generally, and they need to be fixed.
Check out the worst units in the game tier list.
Yeah. Custodes characters will come back up in a future part of this video. I'll tell you that.
So I think, almost every single codex has at least a couple units that don't really do anything. It'd be great to look at these instead of giving armies new detachments, kind of look at the data sheets and fix some of those. I think a Grotmas or come up with some new catchy name for something in the summer would be perfect for Games Workshop.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to our next kind of big thing, which, speaking of Grotmas, we got new detachments for every single army in the game. And there were some big winners. There were some just winners. There was some armies that felt, this is a nice new playstyle. I don't know if I need it. And then there were some losers out there. And I think overall the Grotmas detachments do need some amount of balancing. Here you can see we've added the Seductive Gambit, which is the Legion of Excess Slanesh detachment, and then the Fire Zone Purge from the Bridgehead detachment. Those two stand out as some of the strongest detachments in the game. They easily have a 60+% win rate. Sometimes they've been reaching closer to 70. Yeah, they're too strong. They're too strong in a variety of ways. On the other hand, you have things like the Imperial Agents detachment, the Votan detachment, the Space Wolf detachment, a couple other ones out there that really just aren't competitive with their other ones. They probably could use some sort of buff.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that Grotmas, from a balance perspective, considering how many detachments they released, was probably fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the higher performers like Tactical Brigade or Bridgehead or Slanesh, I think those probably could use a bit of a tweak.
Yeah, and you don't have to remove them from the game. You don't have to just absolutely hammer them. But I think some key targeted changes to just bring their win rate down a bit, make them less kind of automatic to play, not only helps the internal diversity of those books, but also means that when you're playing out there in the wild, you're not always playing games against, Slanesh or Bridgehead or Tactical Brigade. There's other options. You don't want to push out the other Codex detachments. You don't want your Grotmas detachment to be so vastly better than the Codex ones that there's no real reason to play those Codex ones. You want to have competitive options between all of them.
Yeah. So I think just some rebalancing of the Grotmas detachments. They're purely digital release. It actually wouldn't be that hard to go back in and just change all of them.
Even the strong ones don't need to be just murdered. They just need very careful targeted changes.
And there are some really bad Grotmas detachments that could, there are some Grotmas detachments that are the equivalent of the data sheets we were talking about in the last point, where they're just so bad. Like the Black Templar detachment, the Space Wolves detachment. I mean, say nothing of the Imperial Agents detachment. The Imperial Agents detachment legitimately, and I mean this wholeheartedly, would be better if it were just blank, right? Had no text. Because it actually makes your army worse for having it, weirdly enough. But even things for armies that GW cares about, like Black Templars and Space Wolves and Votan and there's a bunch of them.
The Admech one's okay.
The Admech one's okay. I don't really know it. I know the other one's pretty in detail.
The other ones are not okay.
They're terrible. Like the Black Templars one is awful. The Space Wolves one is really, really bad. Like it just doesn't do anything. Go back in there and fix them. You have the opportunity. Let's do it.
All right, moving on to the next change that we would like to see.
Yeah.
It is to the Strength from Death Ynnari rule, and in particular, there's 3 parts to it. We're really going to focus in on lethal intent.
Yeah, I've played this.
Yes.
I've played this to a team event last weekend, and I've been practicing a bunch with Ynnari, and I will tell you, that army is not okay. So here's the thing about Eldar. I've actually come up to the opinion that I think the Codex is largely B tier, personally. I think it doesn't hold primary very well. I think it runs into issues of having to overextend to kill things and not really pushing that well. On the other hand, it is still Eldar, still very very fast, and it can hit quite hard into some targets. So ultimately, I think the Codex is in a fine place. With one very glaring exception, and that is this rule right here. The rest of Ynnari is fine, honestly. I could probably stay where it's at. But lethal intent, no sir. So let me just describe to you what happens when lethal intent is in a game. The game breaks, fundamentally. The best strategy generally is to not kill them in the shooting phase, unless you're going to kill a lot of things in the shooting phase, right? And I mean this like, don't kill that unit. That unit there, just don't shoot it. Just don't shoot it. It's there, don't shoot it. Because life will get much harder for you if you do, I promise you. So what happens is at the end of any phase in which a Ynnari unit is destroyed, whether that's grenade, there's no way to get around this, right? The end of the shooting phase, if you've killed a Ynnari unit with any means, then, and by the way, it gets ridiculous of like, oops, I accidentally, I accidentally killed something. Oops. At the end of that phase, the Ynnari player gets to pick a unit on the board and then make a normal move with it. And that normal move is a normal move, so it can be tokened and made to move further. There's a couple reasons why that's really, really good. One, it's at the end of the phase. It's at the end of the phase. That means you're all done shooting. If you're a shooting army, you're on the other end of the table, you kill something, they stick you the objective on death, and then they move on to the other objective and score 15. And there's like very little that you can do about that. If you put something on the center, they'll just move on to that one. It's very hard to play around it. Let me put it this way. Regular Eldar is bad at holding primary, like actively very bad at it. It's their weakness. It's their Achilles heel. Ynnari flips on his head and is actively very good at holding primary. I drew Necrons round 1 of this team event. Walter Langendorf, incredible player. So, fair play. I I know what you would think. Oh, it's a very tough army. Surely he won primary, but you're very fast. You won secondary. Not so. I won primary by 10 points. I couldn't kill him, right? I didn't kill him. He had a decent amount of his army left at the end of the game, but I, the Fragile Eldar army, won primary. Oh, that should tell you something. It should tell you a little something. I played into the Eldar Mirror. He was playing Aspect Host, and I was playing Ynnari. That matchup is cursed. We both tabled each other. We both had 5 models left at the end of the game. He had 5 Rangers. I had like an Autarch and a Banshee and like 2 dudes. I got a 48 on primary. He got a 16. It's just almost impossible to stop somebody from getting primary when they like, I'll take my turn, then we take our turn, then I'll take my turn again. Right?
Eldar's got to be involved in every player turn.
In every player's turn. So that needs to not happen. It also can involve some really ridiculous play patterns. Like, oh, I killed a unit over there, which also, by the way, all their units have a 3-up armor or a 5-up invuln. So they can very easily, and they have access to -1 to wound. So if they want to make it hard to kill the unit, they'll take their armor saves in cover with -1 to wound. And if they want to make it easy to kill a unit, they won't do any of that, and they'll take their invulns and die. So threading the needle is actually kind of hard. But you do that, and suddenly a Wave Serpent, which almost all tournaments at this point are allowing the Wave Serpent. It seems like that's just how it's going to be. Wave Serpent just goes 20 inches from the back line into the middle of the board at the end of the shooting phase. And then in their turn, it goes another 20 inches and kicks out 10 Fire Dragons.
Yeah, or a Warp Sweater unit moves with lethal intent and then moves 24 inches and takes your home objective.
Yep, they can go up to 40 inches in one turn with a squad of Warp Spiders. They go 14 because you token it, and then they go 26. That's ridiculous. You can move a squad of Howling Banshees like insanely far, 20 plus D6 with a reroll into a charge. It's just too much. I think it needs to be hit in some way. But the way I think it needs to be hit, I didn't think of it, but somebody in chat pointed it out. I forget who did it. Make it immediate. It has to be like, the fact it's the end of the phase is the most abusive part of it.
For sure.
Make it immediate. Once per turn, you get to make a normal move after an enemy's killed something.
And there's going to be plenty of spaces to go into. Your opponent isn't covering literally every angle on the board, but it will be, if they have set up redundancy, they can still interact with you.
Yeah, it's
That's
still a
important.
very strong rule. Don't get me wrong. Like that rule I just said probably still needs to be nerfed in the future. But it's a good place to like land it, so it's not at its most abusive, which is, are you all done shooting? You're all finished? Cool. Now I'm going to move. Maybe also make it range restricted, a unit within 9 of the destroyed unit.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Not anything on the table.
Yeah. It would still be really good. To be clear, it would still be really good if it was a unit within 9 of the destroyed unit immediately moves. It would still be good. It'd still possibly even be too good. But this is way out of whack. Like, there's no restrictions. Unit dies on one side of the board, I'm going to screw you over on the other side, right? And you can screw your opponent over in so many. I played a game into World Eaters where you had 2 brigands. They both came on 9 inches away from me in line of sight and did actions. Because if he shot me, suddenly like a big fight first unit would move 10 inches over to the side and then heroic and turn his turn inside out. And so he just was like, it's better just to do actions with him. And you know what? He was right.
We didn't even mention the Incarn either.
Yeah, the Incarn needs to be like a second pass sort of look at sort of deal. The Incarn's really good. Probably needs to go up like 35 points if I had to guess.
All right, moving on from the old Ynnari, we have, and these are going to be representing kind of broader changes, but there's some units that are just undercosted. I think Fire Dragons are a pretty obvious one, so are Dark Reapers. They're really, really good and have amazing data sheets, but there's plenty of other ones. Scions, the Mortar Teams from Guard, the Taurox is 65 points, Jack.
I don't know. You compare the Taurox to a truck. The truck's a good transport.
It's a really good transport.
It's a really good transport. It doesn't go 18 inches through walls and then kick its cargo out.
That then mortal wounds you to death.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a good amount of pretty undercosted units out there. I think if you don't want to hit Ultramarines directly by removing Oath, I think Calgar and their characters should go up. But if you do change whether they benefit from the new Oath or not, then you could probably leave them around the same. There's a good amount of armies towards the top of the meta that just have undercosted stuff. Same thing for, like, if we're talking about the Slanesh detachment, instead of changing too many of their rules, you could instead just increase the cost so they can't really run 2 Keepers plus 18 Fiends plus all the other stuff that they're running. Reduce this power of the stat check.
Yeah, for sure. And then there are some units that just need to come down. Like, I think Alar's Terminator should go down to 60. 65 is just too high. A lot of I'm Custodes brained, as I always am with every release, but like the Custodes characters need to just need to drop. Like, Shield Captains shouldn't be more than 100. They are so anemic on the rules front. They're just a beat stick. Trajan probably should come down a decent amount because he's also just a beat stick, right? Like, a lot of those data sheets need to a lot of the characters, the Custodes characters they just need to come down like 20, 30 points. Because you just don't see most of them. You just see Blade Champs, sometimes Valyrian because he's cheap. That's really kind of it. The one exception to this, I don't think the Alar's Terminators need to come down too much. The Alar's Captain, because he actually is pretty frustrating in some of these detachments to deal with. I like him. He just doesn't have a home. But like, a lot of the Custodes characters need to just be just like 30 points down each. Like, they're untakeable to a decent amount. Like, the Shield Captain on foot is so bad.
I think Sisters have a lot of melee units that are pretty subpar, honestly. Their shooting units, pretty damn great. But their melee, I would really like to see things like the Repentia and the Zephyrim go down, for sure.
Yeah.
Tau is another one. I think they have a lot of reasonably cheap units, but when you start putting in the cost of a unit plus the guiding unit, all of a sudden it is... you're spending a lot of points for each shooting activation, and I think... some of their units didn't really need to go up that much. I would also like to see some of the Kroot units come down a little bit further to make that detachment more interesting.
I think Helbrecht could come down. Him at 130, again, is also not playable, really, unfortunately. Helby could come down. Grimaldus is probably fine at 130.
He's really good.
He's very good. But Helbrecht is... I want to play him. I really want to play him, but 130... 95 is too cheap. I'll admit that, but like 110 I think would be pretty reasonable.
Inevitably, we'll get some large Chaos Knight decreases because I never see the big Chaos Knights. It's just all War Dogs. So probably some War Dogs will go up like 5 points, and some will come down 5 points, and we'll have that kind of charade that goes on every single time.
Ooh, you might not take 6 Brigands, 6 Carnivores. Ooh,
or you still might.
Yeah, the big Knights in both, especially the ones you don't see, just need to drop. Like, they need to drop a significant amount, actually.
Yeah.
The Incarn, as I said, needs to go up at least like 35 points. The Incarn's ridiculous. The Incarn got wildly better because the rules shuffled around. One rule got slightly better. Another rule got decently worse. 100 points down. Like, okay, whoa.
Whoa. So yeah, there's plenty of things. We're not going to name literally everything. I'm sure everybody can point out the units from their codex that go up, that could go down. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the super chats that we got here. We've got Mr. Redrum with a €5 super chat saying, make Trajan great again, Jack. When you write this late, we all know you write it. Also give Karn point reduction and cut Tau split fire penalty. Thanks.
Well, I'm sure that Richard loved the split fire penalty. I think Karn is fine. What I would honestly change is the enhancement, the one to re-roll on the chart, that needs to not be nerfed into oblivion, please. Thank you. Once a game, imagine. Trajan, though, oh my god, just change him back to ignore mods for real, though. Oh my god, ignoring hit rolls, ignore weapon skill and ballistic skill modifiers. That's what we ignore. Okay,
the ballistic skill modifiers are crucial. Okay,
they took his fight first. Fair enough. All right, you want to remove that from the codex? All right. You take his fight first, fine. But leave his ignore modifiers for his unit. Come on, man. He's 140 points.
At least he's not 160 or whatever he was before.
Sure. He buffs his unit, okay? Let him buff his unit. His unit buffs him right now. And he's too expensive to
honestly, when you think about Trajan, he is the Captain General of the Custodes. He should be a 200 plus point model, but is just absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah,
why is he 140 points for the Captain General? Are you kidding me? How is he less points than Lord Solar? What are we doing? He needs to be worth a significant amount of points. Same thing with Call. It's just like, what are they doing?
Yep. He needs to, I mean, honestly, just put him back where he was and put him up to like 160 and please. They're not going to do that, but maybe.
Ryan G, $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. Since T-Suns are next to get a codex, do you see them getting a full rework of the army rule like Eldar and thus no data slate changes? Or do you think they'll keep the army rule as is with minor tweaks?
I'd be shocked if they kept the army rule where it is.
I would be shocked. Their rules are just broken, and the army just doesn't function because you have to overpoint everything so that they don't have too many Cabal points because Cabals are absolutely broken. So I think they should just redesign the army, but who knows?
It's the clearest army for a redesign. Like, it just needs a redesign. Currently, I know there's people out there who are like, ooh, Thousand Sons are really good. I personally have yet to see that with the newest slate, like back in December. I think that the main issue with that army is its rules are so good that they can't allow the army to like function as an army on the table and have those rules. You get one or the other. So either you have an army that functions on the table, but they clip your wings on that, or you have an army that just is like Magnus and 5 dudes, and then you get a bunch of Cabal points, but you don't have an army. And nobody has fun with that. I'll be honest, I have a gorgeously painted Thousand Sons army on my shelf. I didn't paint it, that's why it's gorgeous. And I have felt an urge to play it every time I've looked at it, and then I start writing a list, and I go, nah, I ain't about this life. I'll just wait until the book. Just, it's so miserable to write armies for it, and they definitely have to see that. If it's the most clear thing in the world, you got to change that. You just got to change it.
We got Mithril Blade 04. Thanks so much for being a member at the bronze tier for 2 months. I really appreciate your support. I'd like flyers to get buffed OC zeros, so they ought to be the best for clearing units off objectives. Would make the various anti-fly units a choice. You may not have played 9th edition.
Yeah.
Because flyers were downright oppressive there. I personally think that they should redesign flyers as a whole. I think flyers as gunships, usually a bad thing for the game, but flyers is more of a support piece that I really think they should have their own suite of stratagems that are all about recon and bringing in supplies and doing additional stuff like that. That would make flyers not really a damage roll, but a support choice that does unique things. That is a lot more interesting, in my opinion. I don't think flyers should be all over 40k. They don't really fit in the game.
They've only ever been either worthless, which most of them are right now, or the most obnoxious thing in existence.
They're like indirect fire, but sometimes better.
Yeah, I want to call attention to the rules from at least when I played Drop Zone Commander, which is like 10 years ago. Their flyer rules were so good, like mwah, mwah. Basically what you did is flyers weren't like gunships that hung out on the board. They were, or a unit that moved around. They were something you brought on. You would pick a board edge and pick an opposite board edge. And the flyer would basically immediately move from the one side you picked to the other. It would stop at one point and you would put it down, and then it would shoot at something and then leave. At any point on its path before you put it down, it can get overwatched by anti-infantry or anti-aircraft guns and shot out of the sky as it's on approach to make its attack. That's super cool. And if your opponent took an interceptor, which was like a highly dedicated unit, when you made your line, they could make their line and intercept you at any point along your path as well. And you had like anti-aircraft umbrellas that your units would put up so that, you know, as it's coming in, you would get to shoot at it with your anti-aircraft guns. So you'd have to like make a hole in their screen so that you could bring your bomber in without it getting shot down. That was sick. They weren't like broken. They were just fine. And there was this like play and counterplay, and they also weren't this supersonic jet that for whatever reason is hovering like this around the entire board, going brrr. Anyway, they were really cool. And I think that's like one of the best designs for an aircraft in a game I've seen, and I would love it if that was ported in. Oh, so much.
We got Ryan G with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Games Workshop says, Gilliman too oppressive. Best I can do is raise Call 30 points. I personally think Call should be more points, but he should be dramatically better. He basically does nothing now. He's just a durable lone op. He should do a wide variety of things because he's such an interesting and unique character, and he's the only name character in Admech. In addition, where name characters are really, really good, he is really, really not good. So I would love to see him go up in points and get actual rules. David Canty, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Any chance of Games Workshop making Big Knights, particularly Chaos, worth taking, or wait for the Codex and hope? How do you make Big Knights worth it but not OP?
Well, one way to do that is to have them be okay in damage, but be a really good buff to nearby armigers. Is a decent way to do that, so that there's that interplay between the two. There is a balancing act you have to cut between, not having it so your opponent has one clear target to shoot at and then your army doesn't work, or you just have a guy who's just a big guy with guns to shoot. But that would probably be the best way, is to make it so that it does decent damage for its cost, but then it also buffs armigers nearby. Something like Bondsman, if Bondsman weren't nerfed to oblivion.
Then we have I'm Too Random. Thanks so much for being a member at the gold tier for 3 months. Really appreciate your support. At those 3 months, you do get the new worm tag in the Discord if you go ahead and submit to the loyalty program, and you'll get access.
Submit to the loyalty
submit
program.
to it, and then you're going to get access to submitting for Fix My List, which we do basically about once a month right now. So definitely check that out. How much help do we think Black Templars need? Is rolling back to previous points costs enough?
I don't think they need a ton of help, honestly. I do think the army is... I think the Black Templar Gladius is underplayed right now, and it's definitely and there's just...
Ultramarines is so easy to play.
It's so easy to play. Like, it just sucks all the oxygen out of the room. I think the Black Templar Gladius is pretty solid. Like, I think it's a pretty strong army. Just people aren't playing it.
Ricky Chow, thanks so much for your $10 super chat. Out of pocket question time. You die and are reincarnated in fantasy D&D world. What class are you, and which AOW coach are you dragging to hell? Are you bringing with you?
Well, I'm definitely bringing Quentin, because he's played a lot of D&D in his time. And I've always been partial to a paladin. I've always liked a paladin. What about you, Siegs? Do you know the D&D classes?
I don't know all of them. I never played D&D. Not much of the role play game. I'm the strategy game guy.
Yeah. Okay, so do you like casting spells, or do you like beating people up in combat? Don't answer that. So you like spells?
Yeah.
Okay. There's wizard, sorcerer, druid, cleric. I'm just looking at base classes.
Wizard would be fun.
Wizard, yeah. You strike me as a guy who'd want to be
Dr.
a wizard.
Wizard.
Yeah, for sure. And who are you bringing with you?
I'm going to bring you, Jack. Oh. And the reason is because I'm going to need a fighter class with me, and that's Jack. I need somebody with big hammer go smash.
I want big sword, and I want to hit people with it.
There's synergy right there.
Saddest part of Veilguard was you don't get a big... You can't have a great sword. You can have a great hammer, a great axe, and I want big sword. I want big sword to hit people with.
We got Redrum here with a €10 super chat. Thank you so much. Are you aware of the bad game Innis had at Manchester Major in the semifinals? And do you think players with a platform should speak up about bad actors to protect newer players? That's a great question. It's a delicate one, honestly. I personally think yes. And the reason is that I think when you display consistently poor sportsmanship over multiple events, over multiple years, have a long history of doing so, I do think that events should take an extra level of impetus to say, this is just not okay behavior. It ruins other people's experiences. And ultimately, 40K should be fun. And if you're going to tournaments, you're paying a lot of money to go travel there, you're taking a whole weekend off, you should be there to have a great time. And it should be you and your opponent's kind of jobs to really make sure that the game is a fun time.
I don't think that it should be the job of players with platform to speak up about problem players.
Oh, sorry. I meant TOs was what I was talking about.
Because I think it should be handled at the event. If it is not handled at the event, which sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It's kind of a case-by-case basis, unfortunately. Then you can... So here's the problem. It's a balancing act for people like us. There's a couple things we want to do. One, most tournament games for most people are not going to be like that. I've played...
And they aren't.
For a ridiculous amount of time, right? I played for like 13 years at this point. Almost all of that has been, I've been attending tournaments. And I have had a very small amount of bad games. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to make it seem... It's so easy to make content about bad actors, cheating, stuff like that. It's so easy to do that. You see that on YouTube all the time. That's not what Innis was doing, right? Innis personally had a bad experience and was talking about it. But like, I want to grow Tournament 40k. I want it to be big as I think it deserves to be, which I think is actually quite popular, quite big. And I don't want to use the platform that we have and make it seem like 40k is full of cheaters and bad actors who definitely exist, but are not
rare.
the bulk of the player base. Most of the stories come from the same people repeatedly. Now, that being said, if those people are allowed to just kind of get away with it over and over and over again, and like, you know, Richard and I and, you know, other people at the top level of tournaments know who the bad actors are because we played them, or we have a lot of friends in this scene. Yeah, that's right. I have a lot of friends. Like, you know, they've played them or I've played them or whatever. So we know who the bad actors are. It is kind of frustrating to see them just skate over and over and over again. But it is such a small amount of the player base proportionally that, like, I don't want to make it seem like it's pervasive when it isn't.
I think at events there should be a more clear system for reporting poor sportsmanship and potential cheating, and it should be the responsibility of the TO there to check with the other players who played this person and see if that was just happened to be a bad game or possibly, you know, being misrepresented, or whether that's a consistent pattern. And it's the consistent pattern. When you do this over multiple events, multiple games in that event, over multiple years, that's the point where you really should just not be allowed to play, frankly.
Which Innis's opponent has a very long history of doing that. If you want to get the details on that, go check out their episode from 2 days ago. You can get the details all about it. I also just kind of don't want to be the guy who's
I don't want to police people.
I don't want to make content about this sort of thing as my bag, right? It's very easy to make. You see it in all competitive games. It's the dude on YouTube who just makes content about cheater scandal, this, that, the other thing. Like, you see it, and it's very popular because it's drama. People want to do that, but I don't want to be the kind of guy making that content, you know? Now, that just means I don't want to, you know, help solve the problem, because I don't think it should be on me to do that, but it's on somebody, and I'll tell you who it should be on. It should be on the TO to deal with it. It really should be. In a perfect world, they solve it, problem solved, all dealt with, and we get to continue making the kind of content that we want to put out instead of.
And to be clear, there are some very good TOs out there who do handle these situations very well.
Yes.
And I think those people do an excellent job, and other TOs really do need to step up their game.
Yes. But unfortunately, yes, there are occasionally people who are repeat offenders. Like, it happens. Unfortunately, people are people, right? People are people, whether they play 40K or whether they're out there doing whatever the heck they do. But that's not really the kind of content we want to put out into the world.
Got Danielle here with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Danny. What's your wish list for a Grey Knight Codex? I would love to see Nemesis Demon Hammers back in the army. They are in all the kits. They are a huge part of the lore. Why do we not have hammers that hit hard? Voldus still has his hammer.
Yes.
The Nemesis hammer is literally all over the place. Just put a points cost back on running it. It's fine. It's not really the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the biggest thing I want to see. I want to see an army that also doesn't really need to spam Dread Knights to have range damage. All of the psychic weapons should do significantly more damage.
Yes.
They are not designed. They're literally mind bullets. They're supposed to be good into a lot of things. So whether they should all have dev wounds or have significantly higher AP and ignores cover, like, they just need to do more than literally nothing.
Yeah.
Kevin Bono, thanks so much for the 2 Canadian super chat. Appreciate it. What would you do to fix a Dark Angels Codex?
Fix? I mean, a lot of the detachments just need a little bit of a facelift. That's it.
Yeah. The thing is, Dark Angels have really good data sheets. They don't have amazing detachments. Instead, they go for the generic Marine ones like Gladius instead. And I think they could just use a couple of those, could use some specific buffs.
Ravenwing data sheets also could use a bit of a facelift as well.
Definitely. Besides Samuel. Samuel's actually quite good.
Samuel's pretty good. But the Black Knights and then
they just don't hit hard enough.
Yeah. I watched a 9 brick a unit of Black Knights attached with a Ravenwing command squad charge a unit of 3 Sanguinary Guards, 9 bikes. It was an attached character unit to 6 Black Knights. Charge 3 Sanguinary Guard plus a captain. Would you like to know how many died? 0. 1 wound. I took 1 damage.
Strong. We got Chris Blackham in the chat. $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Chris. Good seeing you, Jack, last weekend. Richard, miss you too. Just make witches actually hit in combat. That is all I want.
True. Witches suck. They really suck.
I want to point it out, if you've never played against Chris Blackham, he is one of the loveliest people you'll ever play against in the entire game. We had many battles way back in the olden days of the Southeast 40k, but he is an amazing opponent, and I'm glad to see you back playing 40k, Chris. It has been too long.
He wasn't just back. It was also really good to chat with you a couple times, Chris. He wasn't just back. He was the highest point scorer at the event
And
with Imperial
no
Knights.
surprise. Amazing player.
And his Imperial Knights list has me thinking a certain way about what list I'd like to run to teams. I'll tell you that.
I also agree, as somebody who has been playing Drukhari quite a bit recently, witches do just need to hit harder.
Yeah, even Ynnari witches also are embarrassingly bad. Ynnari succubus.
Drukhari just need more or twin linked in their army.
Yeah. Or just, I don't know, something, right?
They don't need more attacks at their poor profile. They just need something that enhances it.
3-1-1 is embarrassing. Why?
Hey, when you get Lilith in there and the token, you're up to AP3.
Sure.
We got Redrum here with a €2 super chat. Thank you so much. Since is next in line, any wishes for World Eaters book?
I want it to be more consistent. My main issue with World Eaters is that they're pretty inconsistent between having to roll for your advance and charge, having to roll for your buffs, and then getting Angron back or not. The army is incredibly random. They're also the trapping you in combat, stuff like that. I'm okay with some of that. The trapping you in combat is great because it puts the onus on your opponent, right? We flip a coin to find out if you can fall back or not. And if it comes up tails, sure, okay, we keep playing the game. But if it comes up heads and I trap you in combat, then prepare for trouble and make it double, right? That's the kind of randomness I think it's okay to sprinkle in, where you can just throw it in as part of your plan, and if it pays off, awesome. If it doesn't. But Angron coming back is way too swingy of a mechanic. It needs to either be something where you can work for getting him back and then get him back like some amount later in the game consistently, but where your opponent knows it's coming and maybe it takes some time and takes a resource in order for you to do it. The difference between killing Angron, him coming back immediately, and killing Angron early and he never comes back is too stark, right? There needs to be a middle ground in there. In addition, and it needs to be more consistent in the middle ground. In addition, rolling and just being like, I didn't get advanced in charge. Oops. That probably just shouldn't happen as well. So what I want really is I want the blood tie effect from the past, where every time anything dies, you get a point. And then you can spend, and it just racks up, and you can spend them to do something. And if way at the top of that is bring Angron back, then sure, you're not giving your army a suite of buffs. So like, whatever. And then that'd be neat. So if you're like aiming to bring Angron back, it's pretty clear, oh my God, he's got like 9 blood points. He's working his way up there, And then maybe you get Angron back and okay, fine.
We have Caldor 40k, £2 super chat. Thank you so much. How would you improve CSM, particularly RR, which I believe is Renegade Raiders? I believe that is one of the top 3 detachments personally. I don't really think Renegade Raiders needs much help overall. I think Chaos Space Marines are just in a great, solid, strong spot. They have Creations of the Bile. You can play Renegade Raiders, and those are probably considered the 2 best ones by the top CSM players.
Probably, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's the ones that Zacho's been talking to me about.
Yeah. So, like, it's already a really good detachment. Probably what they need is a look at some of the weaker detachments that they have, just to amp them up a little bit more. And probably a couple of their lesser seen units that don't really have a purpose, like Raptors or such, could probably use a tweak. Yeah. Tim Parker, thanks so much for your £5 super chat. Would your theoretical Fire Dragon Dark Reaper nerfs be paired with buffs elsewhere? If so, what? I doubt Eldari would stay B tier otherwise. I'd like to see Wraiths. Not Wraith Lords, but the other Wraiths get some sort of extra thing. That's my favorite units, and I think outside of their specific detachment, they're not really that amazing,
I
unfortunately.
I think there's some tweaks up and down that you can do to the army.
Morgan Ra,
Yeah.
somehow the worst Phoenix Lord every time.
Every single time.
So they still have units that you're probably not going to see that often that could definitely use help.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of these units need to go up a ton, right? A little bit to Fire Dragons, maybe a little bit to Dark Reapers, stuff like that. And then you can drop the cost on like some of the characters. A lot of the characters are a little too expensive just to be included when paired against some of the data sheets. Decent amount of the Phoenix Lords can come down. Like Baharoth is not that great. Morgan Ra, as you said, not that great. Like a lot of those can come down. And I think that would even out a decent amount. Like what I want is to encourage you to take a character with your 5-man Aspect Warrior unit, as opposed to just taking 5-man Aspect Warrior units.
Yeah, which is just vastly superior right now. Yeah. High Fleet Murder, aptly titled, $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Tyranids have a lot of monsters that are overcosted. They have things like the Toxicron, which I've never seen on the table. They have the Hive Crone. They have a variety of things that certainly aren't really seen. There's some of the Norns aren't particularly good outside of Assimilation Swarm. So definitely Tyranids could have some units that are underutilized, underseen, and overcosted. Derek Macy, thanks for your super chat. It looks like you super chatted down here. What would your suggestion be for Imperial buffs? I assume this means Imperial agents?
Imperial Knights?
Could be Imperial Knights. For Knights, really they're big Knights. I think Bondsman abilities should be stronger, personally. I think it is much better to make the Knights worth their cost by making Bondsman stronger. I think there's an enhancement that lets you pick 2 units to get the buff. I think that the Bondsman buff should be strong, and they should go out to multiple of the Armigers. You should be encouraged to take like 2 big Knights and a bunch of Armigers. That's really the ideal. For Imperial Agents, on the other hand, they basically don't have anti-tank weapons. Like, you can run a big Knight, you can run like Deathwatch team with the Thunderhammers, but that's a combat unit. They really just don't have a shooting platform. They have tons of cheap bodies.
And they have
that's
good
great.
anti-infantry shooting, but that's not everything.
They're not great at killing Terminators or tough vehicles like Vindicators or something like that. What you do to change that, I'm not sure, because they're effectively relying on allied data sheets. So there's not a great, easy way to do this. I'm not sure how to fix them to fill their major gap. Probably it is you ultimately, instead of having the allied knights, you create specific knight types like in their book, like add data sheets to them and then change those data sheets.
Yeah. That seems pretty decent.
We have a couple more here. Ryan G with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. Wait, Jack actually played Veilguard. It's free on PSN now.
Yeah, I did. I actually enjoyed it. Is it the best game I've ever played? No, but I enjoyed it and I thought it was pretty solid. What I absolutely despise are the people on YouTube who jump on a game immediately, even before it's released, and find all the reasons to just start screaming at the top of their lungs, "This is awful! This is awful! This is awful!" Because it gets clicks, right? It gets cheap views, and then artificially tank a game, and then when it tanks, go, "See, we were right," and then move on to the next game. I despise those people. I think the game was fine. It was not the best game I ever played, but I enjoyed it, and I thought it was solid.
Okay, we got a couple more here, which is Callum with a £5 super chat. Thank you so much, Callum. Think that the Horror Specs needs a 2-up save and Screamer Killer needs Twin Linked with some minor points increases, obviously. Could definitely see that. The Tyranids have so many monsters that there's always going to be some that are lesser seen, but they're lesser seen by a significant enough degree that they should require some amount of changes.
Yeah.
Then we have Micah McComb. Thanks so much for your $2 super chat. How about a cheater-only 40k league scam off? Just lock them in a room.
It would be fun to have a 40k, like a dedicated game where you just see how much, like the entire game is, cheats are legal as long as you're not caught, right?
That's like Cheater Monopoly.
It's like Cheater Monopoly. Yeah, it'd be fun, right? That would be interesting. See just how much you could get away with.
Once you get caught, you get the handcuffs on.
That's right. Yeah, you just have to move your models like this. But yeah, I do want to emphasize again that cheating is a problem in a tournament scene, as it is with every tournament scene ever for anything in real life also. Just people are people, and some people do bad things. But you see it a lot when people call out cheaters specifically or make content based around that. You see the comments are like, see, this is why I never started playing competitive. Man, it just kills me every time I see it.
Yeah,
it really does.
It's exceedingly rare. Then we have Glorak. Thanks so much for your 10-pound super chat. Guardian Battle Host, Autark, Eldrad, Farseer, 3 Conclaves, 3 Warlocks, 2 Storm Guardians with Infiltrate, a Defender Squad, 3 Wraith Lords, 3 Shadow Weavers, 1 Warwalker, and 2x5 Fire Dragons. Thoughts? Thanks so much.
I mean, it seems all right. Guardian Battle Host, if you're really dedicated set on Guardian Battle Host, it seems like an all right list. I think Guardian Battle Host is I think we had it as the weakest one, or maybe the second. I mean, the Armored War Host is terrible, or Armored Host, or whatever the heck it's called. But Guardian Battle Host is just not that great because it buffs some of the data sheets in your army that don't want to be doing the fighting.
Then we have Olivier here joining the Worm Gold tier. Thank you so much for subscribing. Hope you enjoy the content, and also make sure you sync your Discord and YouTube accounts so you get access to our wonderful Discord community. Danielle, $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Danny. One last question about Grey Knights. Drago getting a pick 3. What would you want him to have if he was raised to be pick 3 in the command phase HQ?
Ooh.
+1 to hit and +1 to wound, 6-inch aura for psychic weapons. Easy. Just kidding.
Just Magnus.
Just kidding.
Just Magnus now.
Just kidding. I would love to see him be +1 CP personally instead of a pick 3. Just have his rule, but also give a guaranteed +1 CP. Grey Knights are crying out for additional command points.
Yeah, I mean, even that can just be Voldus, right? Nobody plays Voldus.
Could easily be Voldus as well.
Yeah.
Would Drago unique?
His whole bag is like running in and stabbing people really hard.
Yes.
So just having it be maybe one of his pick 3s, he gains dev wounds. Another one is he gains a 3-up invuln. Another one is he's like +2 attacks. And you just cycle what you want him to do at the start of every fight.
He's a beater. He's blowing up Chaos Demon Primarchs out there, so he should look like it. And then we have Ricky Chow here. Thanks so much for your $5 super chat. I'm the sole and therefore best Harlequin player at a team's event. Who should I be hunting? And please bless me with Kegrat's luck.
Probably regular Eldar, honestly. That's probably who you should be hunting. You just have more units than them. You are as fast as them. You both kill each other.
Thank you so much for your super chat. John Walker, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Do you think War Dogs are mandatory for Emperor's Children for anti-tank? I don't think they're mandatory. John has already won several games without a single War Dog showing its face. Probably into the top of the meta, like the very best armies, they're probably more helpful than running more combat pieces. But I don't know. We just released a game today of his Emperor's Children versus Chaos Demons, where he played his updated coterie list with the Demon Princes. And those Demon Princes absolutely slammed. Really, really good showing from the Demon Princes in Emperor's Children. So it's a great game to check out if you want to see his updated style. I didn't feel like at any point he was missing having Brigands.
Yeah. I don't think that's what he needs.
Okay, excellent. Looks like we got through all the super chats here. So thank you so much, everybody who supported us and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Please do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow the YouTube channel and spread, 40k competitive knowledge out there in the wild. If you are joining us, definitely leave a comment below letting us know what you thought of our opinions on things that we would like to see changed in the balanced data slate, and also what things did we miss? What things didn't we talk about? What things are you personally experienced that you'd like to see changed as well? And then, if you want to see more content from us, check out The Worm at theworm.vhx.tv. There's a 3-day free trial, and in addition, not only do you get content for every faction, including the new ones like Emperor's Children, there's a lot of new games with Emperor's Children recently, but there's also access to our international Discord community, and in the future, our TTS League just started, but there will be more coming out in the future because it was extremely popular. I think it had like 130 people or something like that. Huge league. So lots of people excited about playing 40k right now. So come on and join our community. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate your support, and we'll see you all next time for plenty more content. So long for now.
Bye-bye.